What's up, guys? Today I'm going to do a little tying demo, and what I'm going to do today is tie my go-to leech pattern for steelhead and big rainbow trout in Alaska, and pretty much whatever you want to you're going to swing a big leech for. So this pattern is called my late season special because it's all I used in the late season in Alaska my last few years after I kind of dialed this fly in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I do use a big 8mm trout bead for the front of that, and most hooks and shanks don't allow for that to go on the shank. So what I had to do here is I took a cutaway hook, but I bent it with some big pliers, and so it allows you to slide the hook on there. And then we're going to do a stinger loop here, and this I have 65-pound Power Pro. It stays stiff enough to not spin out and not droop as much, and but still small enough to fit through the eye hooks. And then I'm going to be using some PP140 Vivis here, and you can see I'm almost to the bottom of this spool, so we're going to use it up on a good fly. So what we're going to do for the first material is I'm going to get some black rabbit, like every good leech fly pretty much has, and I'm going to line it up so my leather is about the same distance as my stinger loop there. And I'm going to part my fur so I can get to the hide, and I'm going to wrap in right here at the back of this, right at the back of my wraps here. Okay, get a couple of wraps, tie that down, and I want to leave this here, and I'm not going to cut this away, so I'm going to use this rest of this material as well. And so our next material is I have a piece of UV copper polar chenille here. I'm going to pull these strands back, and I'm going to tie this in right underneath that leather. Wrap that in nice and tight. Make sure you get all those strands or else they fall apart for the polar chenille. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap my thread all the way back to the front. So I'm going to pull all this leather back. I'm going to wrap my polar chenille inside once. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to double palmer this. So this fly, that's what makes this fly a little bit different, is I'm going to double palmer. And what that does make you do is you really have to brush this out. Make sure you're not on top of your fibers. And what that does is it lets you add a little bit of sparkle and UV underneath that rabbit without having to do two separate steps. It takes a little bit longer the first couple times you do it, and then you get used to it, and you go pretty quick. And now we're going to tie up these materials, and we're going to cut both of them away. We're going to cut these back. And then we're going to wrap over this leather. Nice. Okay, so now this is going to be a copper. So we're going to do nice. We got this hammered copper flash boot here. You can use whatever color copper you like. The light copper, the gold, the dark copper, the holographic. I like this hammered black. I don't know, I just like the little black spots on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab about maybe 10 strands of this. I'm going to cut them back nice and tight into this clump because we're going to pretty much use the whole thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of find the halfway point, and I'm going to space them out on top of this fly. And I'm going to tie it down, and then I'm going to fold it over. And I don't want them to be all in one spot. I kind of want them to kind of be spaced out on top of the leather so you can see the black underneath it, but there's also that copper there. All right, now for the head of this fly. So this is a quick pattern I've added and taken away steps throughout the years. But this is probably one of my favorite variants of it. Here we go. That's what I'm looking for. So on the head, we're going to do chocolate brown hairline iced up. So I like the chocolate brown. The straight copper is just a little too much. Now, if you ever do an ice dub head or laser dub head, I like to stack it. So I like to pull it and fold it till they're all pretty much lined up the same. I'm going to roll it around, give it a couple wraps. It's a good distance. Now, before we fold over and finish this fly, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add some rubber legs. So the little calling card that I started to do a few years ago, just because I had a lot of them, is I started putting pink rubber legs on all my flies. Even if it was the same pattern that everyone else was throwing, I was like, dude, I'm just going to throw some pink ones on there. And then also, if people stole my flies out of my boat, I could tell because no one else is throwing pink. So I got pink chacones, crusher legs here. I'm throwing 3 on each side. You can throw 2 on each side. I'm going a little heavy here with the 3, but I like them. So we're doing 3 on each side. Kind of wrap those down. And then for this fly, another thing that I do a little different is I'm not going to bring the thread forward. The thread's going to stay right there. So you're going to throw a big half hitch over top, not to get wrapped. Watch your rubber legs, try not to stick them there. Throw 3 or 4 half hitches here. It's kind of tricky if you try to use a whip finish tool, unless you're really good with it. So I just throw a bunch of half hitches on here. And this would be when you would throw your super glue on here. Throw a little dab of this on there. If any of this comes out, great. Okay. And then cut it off. Cut your thread off. And what that does, since we're tying it here and not pushing forward, makes that head just a little bit poofier. So when you throw those thread wraps in front, it's going to really push this down. And then now we're going to trim off the tags, the little stubs from the mold from the rubber legs. We're good to go. There's our pink, our copper, our black. So we got the UV underneath, the UV and the rubber legs. And this is my favorite go-to swing leech. This is my late season special. I throw it all the time. It's a great dark day fly. It's really easy to do. You can punch out a whole box of them in an afternoon, no problem. All right, thanks guys.